Third topic is State of FinOps Report 2025 by the FinOps Foundation. This is their fifth annual report produced by the FinOps Foundation. I found it quite interesting. FinOps is kind of obviously a major topic in terms of cloud economics, as I call it. By the way, I've written an article on cloud economics, guys, which kind of includes FinOps as one of the parts, but it's not the only one, as we've found out. And as I said earlier, in this episode of Cloud State of Play, at the Open Source Summit last year that I attended. More information on that as well coming up. More videos will be in interviews as well on that, by the way, on the channel, depending on when you're watching this. I was there to moderate a talk completely disassociated with FinOps, but I found that actually there's a lot more to this sort of cloud economic space than FinOps. But let's just focus kind of on the report a little bit first, Paul. Maybe I'll come back with some of the comments. What was kind of any highlights for you? What did you pick up on?
Well, picked up on the fact that FinOps appears to be moving beyond just managing the sort of cloud cost arena and moving into what they're calling FinOps Plus, was it, I think? So they're looking at data center. They're looking at, a much
Cloud Plus, I think.
Cloud Plus. That's
Cloud Plus,
right.
yeah.
Cloud Plus. So they were looking at a much broader set of, which I think is, they got to do. I think if you're just, focused. So that was fine. I found I'm looking at the sort of FinOps framework too, and you can't say there's anything wrong with it, but it's almost like you can, they're saying you can pick and choose what you want from the list for where to start. And I was just worried that, we've had the conversation before about a number of areas that unless you've got the framework set in your mind and you know why you're starting here and you will go and use all the other bits, it will be suboptimal. And I just felt they were a little too loose with, it's not prescriptive. This is, it's a set of tools, a set of things that you should be doing. And it's almost like, you can just imagine teams go, oh, well, I'm going to start with, what are they going to call it? All the, cloud sustainability or the licensing and SaaS rate optimization work. I'm going to start there and then work out, and you think it's so, the implications around cost and benefit in cloud are so interwoven that if you take two, and I think this is where FinOps has had a problem, it's taken too siloed a view of what's going on.
So they said about the era of Cloud Plus in FinOps. So it says FinOps is as important as ever for delivering value in cloud. Not surprising, really. Blowing your own trumpet. Other technology investments with the majority of practices beginning to manage SaaS spend. Okay, nearly half managing licensing. Some FinOps practices have started to apply their capabilities to private cloud and data center scopes of spending in a sort of spending in a cloud plus approach to FinOps. Good luck with trying to circle all of the costs in your data center. That's all I can say about that.
Yeah, yes, I agree with you. I love the fact that they've got, allied personas, ITFM, which I presume is IT finance management, ITAM, IT asset management, and ITSM, IT service management. Again, corralling all that lot is going to be an interesting challenge.
Good luck. Yeah, exactly.
But nonetheless, you've got to bring them in, because if you want to get an accurate view of your costs, you're going to have to, but it is you're biting off a very large piece of work there. Yeah,
so I'll come to the highlights in a minute, but my beef at the moment is and I could be completely wrong, this could already be solutioned somewhere, is when you're doing FinOps, FinOps is a framework, right? So it's a much kind of larger type of activity. And I've been on the FinOps X events, I think our FinOps Foundation events, and the type of people that you get on there, and they're all from the finance sector. We've got like 10 people on FinOps. I'm the director of, or the FinOps director for Barclays, and all that kind of type of approach. And yeah, when you have an army of people to throw at it, yeah, I'm sure you can make FinOps work. But when you're an SME company, it's very hard to kind of apply this type of framework, bring in the types of tools that FinOps recommends, and so on. And hence why I think there has been an opening. They really, I think FinOps Foundation hasn't got a clue what's happening underneath them, what's below the kind of the FinOps layer. And under the FinOps layer are things like what I would call cloud cost management or optimization. So that's where you're focusing your cost savings on a particular area of your cloud. So for example, OpenCost from the CNCF focuses on purely, the Kubernetes space, or like, which is developed by KubeCost, by the way, which is now part of IBM. They were acquired last year by IBM. And KubeCost essentially is focusing on your Kubernetes clusters. It doesn't care about your virtual machines, doesn't care about any external data or storage or API gateways or anything that's outside of that Kubernetes cluster. It just looks at the resources for your Kubernetes cluster and tries to make savings for you there. So that's very kind of laser focused in particular areas. And that's what I would call a cloud cost management or optimization layer. Now, a third layer that I found, and by the way, this is all in my article that I wrote as well. So if you kind of want more details, I'll include the link for the article in the description. A third layer, which is what I found last year at the Open Source Summit, was profiling. So profiling is actually looking at how you develop the application and whether your code and your development of where the application is using, whether they're cloud resources or any of the other type of resources, is actually optimized. So before you've even released your application, profiling helps you to optimize your code. Now, that's not a direct cost saving, but purely by the result of that, the byproduct of that, because you're doing all this optimization of your code, you're using less resources of whatever the platform happens to be, your data center, virtualization platform, public cloud, it doesn't really matter. So profiling is helping you to do that. And the flip side of that coin is application performance monitoring, APM, which you and I obviously have spoken about in the past and we know very well. So, the likes of Turbonomic and App Dynamics and people like that have all done APM for a long time. And that's actually looking at workloads after they're deployed. So are they utilizing their environment and are they configured and built and deployed in a cost optimized way? So these other layers, cloud cost management / optimization, some people call it management, some people call it optimization. I think it's the same layer. And then the profiling layer are two other layers which FinOps has no idea about. Absolutely zero idea. Now they might say, oh yeah, our tools do that, or we can integrate with those areas and we can pipe it all up to MoogSoft, which is kind of your aiops tool, if that's what you have, or Dynatrace or Datadog or whatever. Yeah, that's fine. I don't want 10 freaking screens to be looking at when it comes to my cloud cost management. I want I want one interface, one Slack message. That's what I want to have. I don't want like 10 different tools to be doing it. One FinOps tool, one cloud cost optimization tool, one profiling tool, and so on. I want everything to be under one roof, at least reporting and integrating into my, observability platform, maybe.
Yeah, observability into all the various component parts, not so much of an application, but of how costs are built up in this sort of world. Can you do it bottom up effectively? without being sort of there's a top-down element too, isn't there?
Mm.
Which, has come out, which just made me weep actually when I read it again, which sort of basically said there's still not enough, collaboration, if you like, or buy-in from senior,
Mm.
execs, uh, yeah, around, what are, and it probably doesn't filter down into FinOps, is, what's what's our strategy? What are we trying to do? What are the business metrics that are important to us, and
Yeah.
how do these play into that? Because you talked about the one, I love the one about, the sort of optimization of the code.
Yeah.
And you think, well, why have we got a problem down there? We've got a problem down there because A, we expect people to, rattle code out very, very rapidly. And B, we've got infrastructure now that isn't too upset when it's not particularly efficient, in terms of latency and sort of raw performance. From a cost perspective, somewhat different. I mean, if you go to an AWS or Azure or GCP with applications that are made up of sort of various services that are not efficiently written, it could cost you a lot of money in terms of the way you're paying your bills. But again, that may not be a particular issue for you. Is if the benefit you're getting from those is so great, your return on investment is wonderful, that it costs more money to try and make those really efficient than the benefit you're getting out at the far end. And I think I've used the analogy before of the big European Swiss
Yeah.
bank, where the cloud guys were getting hammered by the finance guys because their cloud bills kept going through the roof. They were spending more than they used to on analytics than when they weren't in the cloud.
Mm.
To which the answer should have been, and to the frustration of the cloud person we were talking to, the finance people didn't seem to get, with the fact that actually now the amount of analysis they can do gives them opportunities in different marketplaces, and he hadn't done the work to find out what the real return on investment was. But it it is a huge, huge area.
Mm.
I think I was glad to see that it was trying to cover the broader sense. But as you say, trying to corral that lot's going to be a real challenge.
Yeah, and like I said, it's just like I said, I see FinOps as a framework approach, and just by nature, by just saying that, and kind of how I think the FinOps Foundation approaches it, it's quite a cumbersome and bulky thing to implement, because you're having to bring in lots of different people, finance and product owners and whatever else you're gonna whatever they have in their framework to kind of bring in, and that's why I think there's been this kind of splintering of that, because people have seen, well, nobody's looking at Kubernetes clusters, so we're going to produce something called KubeCost. We're going to open source it as open cost through the CNCF, and oh look, we're actually important enough for IBM to acquire us. So clearly, this is something, we're doing something right here by focusing purely on Kubernetes clusters and not caring about the rest of the cloud environment. Let FinOps deal with that. We'll just deal with this, with optimizing the Kubernetes clusters, that you're running in whichever cloud. And again, same thing in terms of the application layer with this profiling and APM. Shout out, by the way, to Frederick Branchik from Polar Signals for bringing me into the light to actually see, to talk about and realize that profiling is a thing as well. So he actually helped me to get to grips with kind of how profiling works and everything else. I have done an interview with Frederick from Polar Signals, so we will be releasing that on the channel soon, if it's not out already, depending on when you're actually watching this. But just point to make on that is that if you are going to do FinOps, and be prepared to kind of give it a lot of focus, and literally almost assign somebody full time to be kind of your FinOps guy, your FinOps lead, if you like, or have a small team, or maybe be part of the CCOE sort of group that you have, and so on. So I think that's kind of needs to be formalized in that way, and for the people who are actually doing the FinOps practice, obviously they need to be certified and so on, and that's all fine. But like I said, it is a framework approach. It's a much larger investment and commitment to do FinOps than bringing in something like kube cost or open cost and dropping it, or even Polar Signal tool and just dropping it on these particular areas and saying, okay, look, we can save costs here and we can save costs here.
I've often said about DevOps that it's capital DEV and a very small OPS. Here, it's very much definitely a capital FIN and a very small OPS.
Yeah, exactly.
And so the danger is you just create another silo. It's the thanks God.
Well, yeah, exactly. So I think that's what we're seeing. I think with these other areas, and unfortunately, the FinOps Foundation just seems to be completely oblivious to all the stuff that's happening underneath it, and and if it's not. If it doesn't do, and again, like I said, I could be wrong, audience, please let me know if you know this already. If it does integrate with other tools like aiops tools or your observability tools, your traditional observability tools, and so on, then that's great. Okay, that's fine. It's actually reporting to something. But if it's not doing that, and it's just saying, no, I just do FinOps, this interface or these tools from these third parties that we recommend as part of the foundation, just do FinOps. Right. And I know that there are tools like that, but I've not dug into kind of deeper into, well, how do they integrate? The first thing whenever I get kind of somebody says, oh yeah, you can see everything on this monitor, on this UI. And I say, okay, how does that integrate with something else? That's my first question, always. So yeah, I don't know. I think that aspect of it, needs to be a lot more streamlined than it is. But let's pick up on just some of the highlights from the report. So it said this year's report actually included larger enterprise organizations for a change. So with 31% of them currently spending more than $50 million a year in public cloud, 20% of them spending more than $100 million a year on public cloud. And over 20 of them, 20 organizations, spending more than $1 billion a year. They definitely need all three layers of cloud economics, I think, to be applied.
I think you ought to include that in your rants against repatriation.
Yeah, exactly. That's, repatriation, cloud repatriation. What cloud repatriation?
Yeah, with the cost. So
okay, so workload optimization and waste reduction are clear current top priority for practitioners, FinOps practitioners. Future priorities over the next 12 months include workload optimization, drops a significant 21% to second, while implementing governance and policy at scale becomes top priority. Fair enough. I think, maybe it has been a little bit lopsided in that we're kind of doing FinOps, as I said, with that governance, which is what I said about the CCOE, right?
Yeah.
Bringing that practice under our sort of general strategy and policies in AI. In cloud, right? Highest changes in priorities are managing AI ML spend. There we go. There's AI. That's up 4 places. Managing costs beyond public cloud, up 5 places. And getting to unit economics, up 5 places. Okay, that's interesting. So a lot of kind of changes in terms of the prioritization of what you do. I mean, AI ML again being in there, I'm not really surprised. Yes, we do need to do that at some point. So you might as well start doing that now, and probably because people are still in the POC and piloting mode when it comes to Gen AI.
Yeah, I was interested by the sort of focus on SaaS optimization of in SaaS environments. I was like, well, surely that was part of the original cloud anyway, wasn't it? And this idea that you could ignore the SaaS element of it was sort of strange, given that probably when you look at certainly beyond, I suppose it's because SaaS has been applied most to medium-sized enterprises and smaller enterprises
Yeah.
rather than the largest ones. So maybe that's why it slipped under the radar. But I just looked at it and thought, really? Are you only just thinking about that one now?
Yeah, and what I mean, SaaS should surely be and I could be again completely wrong. Dear audience, let me know if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm happy to eat my words. But SaaS, I would have thought as a subscription model, or as which is essentially what most of them do, should be the most clear-cut cost that you have, that you can see, that's visible. It's £20 a month or whatever it is. Then it's £20 a month. Now you can say whether you want to spend that £20 a month. Is it worth spending that, or are we enabling the right aspects of that SaaS, and that we're spending £20 a month on it? I don't know. That's a different question, though, right?
Yeah, but the challenge, I think, probably maybe why it's bubbled to the surface. You were talking about £20 a month, is that a lot more of it is outcome based, and sort of the sort of splitting up. You're buying SaaS services based on the business outcomes, or rather than saying, because in the early days it was just a way of switching the model from one-time license and support to a subscription model. But I think it's moved beyond that for a lot of SaaS companies in terms of it's almost functions as a service rather than SaaS, but it's outputs and outcomes that they're worried about. So that'll make it slightly more complicated. So in defense of them saying, oh, we better look at SaaS now. But the whole idea that they didn't include SaaS in their original sort of focus seemed bizarre.
So tell me on this one. This is something I picked up, and I could be reading this wrong, but it says in the free-form responses, it said organizational alignment, i.e. leadership buy-in, has reduced from last year by 9%. And then it says, which is a positive indicator. How can your leadership not caring about FinOps anymore, or saying, actually, we don't need to worry about FinOps for this year, being a positive indicator?
I read that and took exactly the same reaction as you. I don't get that. In fact,
that's bizarre.
That was the one that really made me weep, in the sense that, IT has been trying for as long as it's been around.
You don't want to see Paul crying. But no, seriously, I mean, and it says, but it still remains the most needed path to achieve priorities.
Yes, and it's a pox on your organization, really, in the sense that we've been trying for as long as IT's been around to align business and IT, the business leaders and the IT leaders. And every time we think we're just about crossing the bridge and getting everybody to meet up in the middle and shake hands, somebody knocks a hole in the flipping bridge and everybody falls in again.
So, okay, next one.
But I agree with you. It was just
that sentence doesn't make any sense at all. I do not get that. Next one, it said investment and tooling had a large increase. So how can you in a 20% increase? So how can you have investment increasing having a large increase of 20% when you've just said your leaders are saying don't worry about FinOps for 2025? I don't get that. But the tooling side investment and tooling has increased by 20%. So and it says so for example, this time the responses were around upskilling, tooling, specific call outs for automation. This whole sentence doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
And to me, that one smacked of, great, management's not looking, we can go and spend more money on the tooling.
Yeah, which defeats the whole object of
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, what else? I mean, there's a ton of information on there, and that's fine. It's great to actually see that, but I think just some of it doesn't really make a great deal of sense.
It's a complex area, but it's something that needs to be done. But whether you put it all into one framework or whether you give different responsibilities to different, well, back to your, efficiency of the code.
Yes.
Don't make finance people responsible for that.
Yeah. Don't even make developers responsible for that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Let alone ops. But I think I know what I'm going to ask the FinOps Foundation next time I see them at the show. I've got the questions in my head now. So
can I be there and watch?
I'll record it. I'll do it as a live stream. I'll just rock up to them and say, hey, stick a microphone in their face. Okay, so what else did we pick up here? So yeah, sustainability remains flat. I'm not surprised. I think we're seeing that across the board because nobody cares anymore. Okay, one of the other things that they talked about or mentioned is something called focus. Now, focus is a technical specification, according to them, that normalizes cost and usage billing data across cloud vendors. So it's kind of their aggregator, I guess, of sort of costs, open cost and usage specification. That's what it stands for. FinOps Open Cost and Usage Specification. That's what FOCUS stands for. So it's an open specification that defines clear requirements for billing data generators to produce consistent cost and usage data. Tell that to the hyperscalers, first of all.
Yes. Yes.
So that's one of the first things. So nobody's adopted it, as far as I know. And then the other thing is that there has been criticism around presumably this, but what people generally call cloud units, I think, and that, and some people have gone as far as saying FinOps is flawed and has failed in terms of measuring the cost of cloud computing. But again, even in those quarters, we can't see a good explanation being offered as to why it has failed. Yeah. They're just saying that cloud units is not a good way to measure it. Okay, so what's your alternative? Why aren't you putting this out to the FinOps Foundation? Right? I mean, shouting about it, screaming about it that it's not working, or it doesn't give you the full picture when it comes to these cloud units is one thing, but then you've got to you want to go and do something about that, right?
Yeah, I'm reaching for my notepad because there were a couple of things I read, and the units was one, and I put, if they are only using a simple cost saving for units, then shooting. It's never going to be the low, and they were talking about it's never going to be the low cost option.
Yeah,
that was the pushback on FinOps. Why is FinOps not working?
Yeah,
really, always. If you're if you're starting to use too simple a unit like a cloud unit, you're going to run into those sort of anomalies where you think, oh, it's not, cloud's not working, and you go, oh, for goodness sake.
I think the problem here is that one side is the FinOps Foundation is unable to respond because they don't have a clue how things are costed in the public cloud, and on the other side, the hyperscalers are unwilling to respond because if they do respond or become part of the FinOps Foundation, all their secrets are revealed in terms of how they do their costs. And the FinOps Foundation was trying to say, well, I need disclosure. I need to know this so I can recalculate my cloud units or whatever unit of measurement I'm going to use, and so on. So one side is unable because they don't have the truth. They don't have all the formulas and cost tables and whatever that are used by the hyperscalers, or indeed really anybody. And on the other side, they're unwilling to respond.
And in that, you've just summarized in one sentence the whole state of the economy, if you like. We talk about in marketing sort of theory.
I'm not that good.
But they talk about perfect markets and imperfect markets. And the reality is, unless you have perfect knowledge, you can't have a perfect market.
Yeah.
And you're never going to have perfect knowledge because
Never
of
going to
what
have
you
that.
just said.
Yeah.
It's always
Yeah.
going to be imperfect. Therefore, you're going to find different ways of doing this. And
Yeah.
if that's trying to simplify it, forget it.
Yeah. But I mean, there is always, measurements or ways that you can use to be as accurate as you can. And,
Yeah.
Like I said, the pushback, the criticism of the FinOps Foundation is that they're not doing that. It's flawed and it's failing. Is the wording that I'm picking up on the other side. Again, I've got evidence for all of this. I'm not just talking for myself or attacking the FinOps Foundation. This is what other people are saying, right? And I'm merely commenting on that, and then looking at the way that they approach things. Like I said, my biggest gripes are they aware of things like cloud cost optimization and management as a layer below them? Does any of this stuff account for it? Do any of the tools that they recommend, any of the framework approaches they have account for stuff like that? Or is it just their golden list of third-party tools that they recommend from Flexera and various other sort of vendors in that space? And they think, oh, that is FinOps. Okay, these tools are doing FinOps. These other ones, KubeCost and OpenCost and whatever, I have no idea what these do. We're going to ignore them. Same thing for that third layer, the profiling and APM layer. Again, is that included in this kind of report, in their focus approach, their focus, specification, and so on? Again, I have no idea. But these would be all the types of questions that I will be asking them, I think.
They talk about workload optimization in the framework, but whether that's the correct way of doing it, God only knows.
What is that? Yeah, and how are they doing it?
How are they doing it? But again, trying to make one of these frameworks fit all the bits and pieces that are out there is going to be a big job in its own right.
I'd be just happy if they acknowledge these things and say, yes, we need to work on our cloud units. Yes, there is this thing called profiling, and it kind of byproducts. And the byproduct of it is a cost saving. So we really should look at that as well. And that's on our roadmap. I should jump on the next FinOps X call and put those questions out. I think that's what I'm going to do, and record that. If I don't see them at the show, I'll send you the link. You can join me on the call. Because they do allow the audience to ask questions.
I think we've probably murdered this one to the extent.
Well, I mean, it's otherwise you see it's a Deutsche Bank, it's a Schroders call, a Barclays call, an HSBC call, and those guys that get on. Yeah, you've got like 10 people doing FinOps, and you've got a FinOps practice lead or something, and they come on and say, yeah, after my 2-hour lunch with Flexera or whoever, now I can report this to the FinOps X call, and that's fine.
And again, you need to,
but they're not asking the right questions here. Nobody's asking the right questions.
Why? There's a big why. If you're talking to the guys at one of the big banks and they're going, oh, we've got 10 people doing FinOps. To what end? Why? Why have you got them doing that? That's what I want to get to. Anyway.
Yeah. But anyway, so the report is there, guys. Lots more information. Actually, both reports, the McKinsey one and the FinOps Foundation reports, are actually quite extensive. Hopefully, we've kind of given you a rounded view, slightly cynical maybe view of both. But there's lots of stats that you can pick up on, and some useful information, I think, as well. At least to kind of see the trends and where things are going kind of in the future. I guess that's probably the main thing that you could get out of it. I don't think the numbers are really hugely important unless you're standing up and presenting, or you want to do FinOps, or use Gen AI in your organization. Maybe then the figures will come in handy for that. But yeah, a lot more, like I said, evidence around all of this available. So I will be making that available in the description of the video. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to support me. You may also want to check out some of the other videos on this channel. Bye for now.